Some time ago we looked at Success is Counted Sweetest, one of Emily's definition poems, in which she defined success. In this definition poem, through use of a simple yet elegant extended metaphor, Emily defines hope. As we progress through the 3 short stanzas, we will see the regular structure of Emily's definition poems. In the first stanza, we'll get a general metaphor. In the second stanza, we'll get some more details as that metaphor extends. And in the last stanza, the poem will turn inwardly, and the poem's perspective will switch from the general to the personal. This is the general outline of Dickinson's definition poems, of which there are many. After you watch this video to the end, if you haven't already, check out my analysis of Success is Counted Sweetest. You'll see quite a similar structure. Before we begin the analysis, I'll read the poem. Hope is the thing with feathers, by Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. We'll skip over the title since, being an untitled poem, the title is simply the first line in a bigger font. Going to line 1, the metaphor is established quickly. However abrupt, there is still some indirectness to the metaphor. Instead of plainly saying that hope is a bird, the speaker says that hope is the thing with feathers. This might caution us not to make too many presuppositions about hope. Instead, we should look with a new perspective as the metaphor unfolds. This might also mean that seeing hope as just a bird might be too narrow a viewpoint. The point of the metaphor might be that hope can be anything with feathers. Hope is adaptable, it is universal. It can be applied in any situation and give flight to any circumstance. We see the curious inverted commas around hope, which could serve one or more of a few functions. For one, they might simply add emphasis to the thing being defined, hope. Alternatively, they might suggest that what is described isn't necessarily actual hope, but simply a perception of hope. Perhaps so-called hope is the thing with feathers. It is interesting to note that Emily does not say that hope is a thing with feathers, but the thing with feathers. It emphasizes that hope is a singular, unique quality that is in a class of its own. It isn't one of several feathered things, but is the only feathered thing, the thing with feathers. Hope alone can do what hope does. There is some subtle consonance in line 1 that might serve to provide an audio imagery of a bird in flight. We can hear the rustling wings in the th sounds in the thing with feathers. There's also a bit of sibilance in is and feathers, as these sounds nicely bookend the more dominant th consonants. Listen to the elegant flight in the line. Hope is the thing with feathers. In line 2, the hope equals bird metaphor continues. Now we learn that hope perches in the soul. The soul is where hope resides. How comforting that hope finds residence in the human soul. This line indicates that there is hope in each of us. It is an inherent value. By saying that hope perches in the soul, we make reference to the flight from line 1. A bird will take flight and explore a vast area, but eventually it must return home. Hope always comes back to us. Even if we lose hope, that loss is temporary, as the home of hope is the human soul. We get some more action from the bird in line 3. Not only does it perch in the soul, but it sings. Interestingly, it sings a tune without words. This piece of the metaphor is quite brilliant, as literally birds sing tunes without words. Besides parrots, I doubt you've ever heard a bird sing the words of a tune. Nevertheless, they sing their tunes beautifully. The wordlessness of the tune also makes hope more accessible. Without words getting in the way, hope, like music, is a universal language. It is a language that everyone can understand. What else could this wordless singing represent? Easily it refers to stepping out in faith, doing something on the basis of hope. even when we do not know the words of the tune, meaning even when we can't see the details of the path ahead, we can step out and conquer our dreams. Even without knowing the words, we can sing the tune. This is the nature of hope. Also, the wordless singing of hope can be imagined as a constant whisper as we hear the alliterated w sound in without the words. This bird of hope not only sings, but it sings eternally. In line 4, we see that it never stops singing. We can imagine the continuous tune as we notice the n consonants over lines 3 and 4. And sings the tune without the words, and it never stops at all. The at all at line 4's end adds emphasis to the never stops. Just saying it never stops would have sufficed, but the speaker makes it doubly clear that hope is always singing. Also, amid the sea of dashes, we see that at all is further emphasized by being placed within dashes, causing the words to stand out on the page. The perpetuity of the singing is also seen in the repetition of and over lines 3 and 4, which we see again in lines 5, 6, and 8. This repetition is an anaphora, seeing as it is the beginning section of the lines that is repeated. Let's go to stanza 2. In lines 5 and 6, we see that the song is heard sweetly in the gale, in the wind, the strong wind. We also see that the bird is flying through and singing in a rough storm. In fact, it is suggested that the more terrible the storm, the sweeter the singing. This storm is a metaphor for life's trials. The more difficult our circumstances become, the more pronounced our sense of hope. Without hardship, without lack, hope would have no basis on which to exist. Note how, just as at all was emphasized through dashes in stanza 1, the gale is similarly emphasized, telling us that it is especially in strong winds that we must value hope. Also note how gale is capitalized. This turns it into a sort of proper noun, a significant antagonistic force that is in conflict with hope, in conflict with the bird, which we see is also capitalized in line 7. And sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird. Here we see that while hope may be eternal, it can certainly be injured. We see that it takes a sore storm, a terrible storm, to abash or batter or silence the bird. We now have two sides to look at. While desperation can make the bird sing most beautifully, when life gets extremely tough, hope can be abashed. When we encounter unimaginable hardships, it might be impossible to have or at least to exercise hope. Desperation drives hope, but utter desperation creates hopelessness. As the harsh b sounds are introduced through be, abash, and bird, we hear that plosive alliteration that mimics the sound of the bird being battered by the merciless winds. Also, we see the bird belittled in the word little in line 7. This further highlights how vulnerable hope can become, and it contrasts vividly with how strong, elegant, and everlasting it can be. We see in line 8 that hope has kept many warm. As it navigates storms and sings through the most difficult times, it is a source of warmth or comfort to many. As usual, the last stanza turns inwardly. We have moved from the generality seen in the soul and so many in line 8. The speaker now speaks of their own experience with hope. The speaker has heard the song of hope in the chillest land. Here, the chill, the cold must be the most difficult times, the winters of life, if you will. The chill must be the loneliness, the sorrow, depression, grief, fear. Not only has the speaker heard the song of hope in the chillest land, but also in line 10, on the strangest sea. As these chilly lands are the coldest times of life, this strangest sea might be the most confusing or dizzying, the most perplexing time of a person's life. Seas are vast and directionless, mysterious and untamable. Similarly, at times our lives might feel like a strange sea. We don't know where to turn, who to trust, what decision to make. We wonder who we are and where we're going. In this way, our journey through life is like drifting aimlessly upon a strange sea. The consonants in chilliest land and strangest sea adds a musical, even mystical quality to the lines, making the images more surreal. Also note the contrast in imagery as we moved from warm in line 8 the chillest land in line 9. The point is, hope is what can bring warmth to the cold. It is what brings light to the dark. Again, we have a mid-sentence capitalization, as C is capitalized. Just as the bird is the protagonistic force of the poem, the gale and the sea are the deadly duo, the villains. They are the problems and the confusion in our lives. Later we'll see another capitalization in extremity, which adds even more might to the sea and the gale. They are extreme powers that, though extreme, are still not extreme enough to destroy the bird. In the last lines, we see another appealing quality of hope. Even in the most extreme times, hope never asked a crumb of the speaker. Hope never costs us anything. It never asks for anything in return. This might be why hope and faith are so dear to the poor. It costs nothing to hope. Hope is free. It is a gift that lives within each of us. As we end, the extended metaphor is continued. Birds enjoy eating crumbs, and many people like to give crumbs to the birds they see in parks or on the street. Yet, this bird never asks of us even a single crumb. Never is emphasized by the dashes to highlight that hope is always free, always accessible to everyone. There is never a price to pay for it. In terms of rhyme scheme, we have A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, F, F. The rhymes are slanted in the first stanza, very slanted, perhaps as the metaphor for hope is not yet fully developed. As the metaphor solidifies, the rhymes tend toward perfection, though in stanza 2, storm and warm aren't 100% perfect. In line 3, we have a rhymed triplet, which perhaps suggests a further concretization of the definition of hope. Still, only 3 lines rhyme, which might suggest that hope is still yet not perfectly understood. Perhaps if the poem had gone on to another stanza or 2, we would end up with perfect rhymes running across an entire stanza. Thanks for watching this analysis video. If you found it useful, I would appreciate a like and even a comment if you don't mind. Let me know your thoughts on the poem. Also, let me know what poem you would like to see me analyze next. See you next time.